All right, now then, let's go back to Zoom. Hi, Ayala. Okay, Ayala's joining. All right, so let's just start off with our tefillah. Okay. All right. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, בקידה בשתחוויה, שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מענו ומחיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ועל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הראל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך קרב ניחוח, ותציל עלינו אור מקום נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו למען נקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, מאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לרצון ימי פי, וגאון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Amen. כן יהי רצון. Hi, Ella. Wonderful that you're there. Great. So we're going to learn Zohar today, Bezrat Hashem. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And the article we're beginning with is this one here. Vayesev Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar. And God took the people around a roundabout way to leave Egypt. Okay. And the question really is why did he do that? Why did God take the people around this way of the wilderness when they were coming out of Egypt and going to Eretz Israel, going to the land of Israel? And of course, you can think about it in physical terms, right? And the Torah says, in case they see war and they get turned back into Egypt. But I like to think about it also in terms of our inner work. And the way that we're thinking about the coming out of Egypt is the coming out of the dominance of our will to receive for ourselves alone. If you think about the 4 cups on Pesach, okay, we drink 4 cups of wine on Pesach, and therefore the 4 stages of deliverance, the 4 expressions of deliverance. V'hotzeiti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim, and I brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. V'itzalti otam me'avodatam, and I delivered you from their servitude. V'ga'alti etchem, and I will redeem you. V'lakachti etchem li la'am v'atem tiyu li. I will be for you for a God, and you will be for me for a people, and you'll know that I am God. And these are the 4 expressions of deliverance. So if we say that the coming out of Egypt was the starting point, okay, the end point is standing at Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah. And then, of course, you've got the 5th cup, which expresses the coming actually into Eretz Israel. Ve'veiti etchem. But let's just take those 4. So you've got the actual coming out of Egypt is the first step. And the final step is standing at Mount Sinai. So what are the two middle steps? And when we think about how we get trapped with our wills to receive for ourselves alone, with the Yetzer Hara, with the Tsar, with the narrow consciousness of the will to receive, which is the Mitzrayim, with the serving the Pharaoh within us, which is the ultimate of the shells, who is God, that I should listen to his voice. So to actually bring us out of that servitude is the coming out of Egypt. But there's another 2 stages to go. Now, I couldn't actually find exact parallels, but just working through it, if you think about what happened at the Red Sea, there were 2 stages, not one. The first stage was when the children of Israel went forwards into the sea, and the seas parted, and the water became dry land, and they passed through. And the second aspect was the destruction of the Egyptians. Okay? So if you think about it from the terms of how we get out of bad habits, habits of our egoism, habits of our clutch, where the will to receive for ourselves alone absolutely clutches at us, then we can see that we can get out initially, all right? We get enthusiastic, we get energy, we can move forwards, we can get out, and then we hit difficulties, all right? Get bored, we get fed up, we can't see where we're going, we lose enthusiasm, or we actually find, the barriers are very big, and we tend to turn back. We tend to leave the prison of our egoism and then find ourselves in this strange situation, strange world, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right, doesn't whatever, okay? And we have a tendency to go back into old habits. So we can see it's not a one-step process. Before when we actually get out of Egypt, we now need to have another step to ensure that we're going to move forwards, okay? And I think that step was the necessity of the Kriyat Yam Suf. So the Kriyat Yam Suf means moving forwards, okay? And that's what God said. Don't speak to me. What are you calling to me for? Move forwards. Tell the children of Israel to keep going. Okay, you have to move forwards. All right. So, and then only after we've made that step of moving forwards, then the waters divided and the sea became dry land, and they were able to pass through. And then Moses did the second aspect of the crossing of the Red Sea, which is he stretched out his arm again over the waters, and the waters came back on the Egyptians, and the Egyptians drowned. And all the children of Israel saw the deliverance. And we talked before Pesach about the difference between exile and redemption, between Golah and Geula, being the Ot Aleph, the recognition that God is of God, actually, the actual experience of God, the actual recognition of God, the actual connection with God, and that is actually Geula. And in many places, Rabbi Ashlag writes that Geula, redemption, is actually the experience of the one, and that they definitely had at the Red Sea, because they saw there the hand of God in a way that they hadn't seen it before previously. So that even the youngest handmaid saw more than the Yechezkel saw at when he saw the vision of the chariot. Okay, even the youngest handmaid saw more there. So we've got the crossing of the Red Sea was an actual necessity, okay, to enable the stages of redemption to take place. Okay, so here we have, and God took the children of Israel, took the people by the way of the wilderness. And the way of the wilderness, it's not an easy way, because a way of a wilderness is like you're going from the will to receive oneself alone. The Egyptians, this the Egypt where at least some aspects of your will to receive is being fulfilled. Okay, and then you're going into a wilderness. You're going into, it feels like a wilderness. It feels like nothing. It feels like I am going into a place where there's no satisfaction, because what we're actually asked to do is, when we're moving forwards away from our egoistic tendencies into the connection with God, we have to go forwards in faith. And that's very difficult because it feels very dry. It feels like going through a wilderness. It really feels like that, because it feels that there's no satisfaction. All right, because with we're used to looking at satisfaction from the perspective of our wills to receive for ourselves alone. And when they don't get, it feels like a wilderness. It feels like, okay, nothing there. And so what we have to understand is that we're moving forwards into the aspect of giving unconditionally, which is the aspect of the Yashar El of Israel. That is an aspect which does not feed the will to receive oneself alone. It doesn't. It feeds another aspect, and it's a totally different vibration. It's a totally different frequency. And so it feels like a wilderness. So God took the people by way of the wilderness. To rectify the way towards the makom. Now, makom, obviously, in the literal sense, would mean destination, to the place they're going to, all right? But very often in Kabbalah, you get a much more accurate understanding of the word makom when you translate it as desire. When you're going el makomo, all right, it's going to its place, its destination, its true desire. What is the desire? To arrive, to arrive as one man with one heart at Mount Sinai. Klomar, that is to say, Kedei lasot kriyat yam suf. This was clearly a necessity, okay? Like we explained, all right? We have egoistic tendencies. We've come out of Egypt, but we've got habits which are very strong, tend to pulling us back. And so in order to deal with that, we need to do a kind of kriyat yam suf, a parting of the Red Sea. Now, what is the meaning of kriyat yam suf? Kriyat yam suf, the yam suf, the idea of the yam suf is like a sea, okay? A sea filled with wisdom, the sea of wisdom, the tremendous wisdom of God, all right? If we were to receive all this light, because it was clearly light there, it says if there was one finger of what they saw in Egypt, then what they saw by the sea was a hand, all right? Yes, you had all this mathematics going on you had all the mathematical things going on in the Haggadah, yeah, about if it was worth 5 in Egypt, it was worth 250 by the sea, etc., etc. Okay, so the Yam Suf it means the sea of wisdom, the great light of God. Now, if we were to actually receive such a great light, okay, and remember, we're talking about ourselves coming out of our egoistic tendencies. Our will to receive for ourselves alone is pretty strong, all right, not yet transformed into the will to give. And we were to receive that great light as a whole sea, or just, okay, it's too much. It's simply too much. We would receive the light just as it is and drown. And in a way, that's what the Egyptians did. I mean, they wanted all the light. That was their nature. They wanted to receive all the light. That's why they did not want to let Israel go. Why was it that they didn't want to let Israel go? I mean, it's very interesting to think about it. I mean, you could see that at every single plague, the condition of Egypt was getting worse and worse, until even the servants of Pharaoh said to him, "You're destroying the country. Let these people go." Why didn't Pharaoh want to let the people go? Because Pharaoh is not just a physical, a historical figure, happened thousands of years ago. He's an aspect of ourselves, within ourselves, a very hard klippah, which actually is, in a way, it's actually wants the spirituality for itself alone. And it can't get spirituality so long as it's in opposition or form from God. All right. So what does it need? It needs the presence of Israel to bring the light, and then it can grab it. Okay. And that's the danger of the Pharaoh. Okay. Because the will to receive in spirituality is a very big will to receive indeed. It's actually the biggest. And so it doesn't want to let Israel go. It doesn't want to let the soul go, because if it does, where will it get its light from? All right. So no matter what was happening, Pharaoh didn't want to let the people go. All right. So they have this tremendous will to receive. So the Pharaoh, and it's the Pharaoh within us, the will to receive in spirituality, has this tremendous desire. And if the yam of wisdom stays whole, and we sort of like were to just receive the whole thing, we'd drown in it. It'd be like the breaking of the vessels all over again. So it was necessary to do kriyat yam suf, to divide the sea into half. Okay. Now I know that, God divided the sea into half, but it's teaching us what we need to do. It's teaching us that we need to function from the right-hand side and the left-hand side of that. Right-hand side is the aspect of giving unconditionally. The left-hand side is refraining from using our will to receive. And from its right and its left, it's like a choma, it's like a wall which protects. Okay, so we can, it's like the yamin mekarevet, the right-hand side, which is the side of giving, and the left-hand side, which is pushing back that will to receive, pushing back the light, so we don't receive it for ourselves alone. That is what keeps the sea as a dry land and allows us to progress forwards. Okay, and as we do that, what we can see is that we're moving on. We're no longer pulled back to those old habits of serving the Egyptians. We're moving forwards. All right, and that is, I think, to me, the absolute requirement, that there had to be the dividing of the Red Sea. Okay, they had to go that way. Mishum loken, because im loken, because if that wasn't the case, it would have been sufficient to lead them just by the wilderness, and not by the way of the Red Sea. I mean, you can sort of like use your imagination, for example, and just imagine, okay, that God's taken the children of Israel out of Egypt, all right, and he's leading them along with the pillar of cloud by night and the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night, okay, and there comes to a point and Pharaoh and his army catches up. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a Red Sea that kills the Egyptians. It could be an earthquake. It could be a hailstorm which just lands on the side of the Egyptians. Anything could have happened. I mean, God doesn't actually need Dafka, the Red Sea, to kill the Egyptians. but what he does need to do is to teach us how to move forwards. That's what he needs us to teach us, how to move forwards when the call to go back to Egypt, to go back to that old habits is very strong, okay? That's what he wants us for, because like it says, the Zohar says, I am a spiklan chotam der hamid ba'alevad. It could have gone another way. Then they go on to discuss something different, which I think is actually extremely interesting. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shmuel, ma hashinoi kshayu Yisrael b'Mitzrayim? What is the difference? When Israel were in Egypt, Katuv, it's written, Shalach et ami, let my people go. Ki im ma nata l'shalech et ami. Because why do you refuse to send away my people? B'ni b'chori Yisrael, my son, my firstborn Israel. And so this was the very first message that Moses gives Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, at that time, they hadn't done circumcision, they were still worshipping idols, they were still sunk in slavery, they had not yet connected properly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'kan, and here, right, when they're out of Egypt already, they were circumcised. They did that on the night of Pesach. Asur Pesach, they sacrificed the Paschal lamb. Nikshurubo, they went out in faith. They did everything they were told to do. They're eating the matzah. They're not having the chametz. Why at this point does he say, why does the scripture call them Koeotam Ha'am? Why did you just say, oh, the people, and God just took the people? Lama lo ami, why not my people? Lamed Aleph, Mishiv, Ela Mishum Erev Ravahu, because it was because of the mixed multitude, Shenidabku Bahem, which clung to them, Venit Alvu Imahem, and mixed with them. Amstam. He calls them here only the people, Velo Ami, and not my people. Who the Erev Rav? So the Erev Rav, in the historical sense, if you want to call it that, was the fact that in Egypt, as Zohar says, in Egypt there was other slaves from other peoples. It wasn't just the Jewish people or the children of Israel who were enslaved, and many other peoples were enslaved by the Egyptians. And when all the plagues happened, the other slaves also took advantage and joined with the Jewish people to leave. That's from a historical perspective. But what about from an inner perspective? Who are the Erev Rav? So the Erev Rav is the origin of our will to receive for ourselves alone. It's the poison which the snake gave to Eve when she ate the apple. It's the essence of the klipot. That is the Erev Rav. So what is the Zohar teaching us here? He's teaching us we've got two aspects who are coming out of Egypt. One is the B'ni B'chori Yisrael, my son, my firstborn Israel. Okay, the other side of us is a very mixed motives, all right? We have many motives within us. We have the motive which is pure, the motive which is Torah Lishma, Torah for its own sake, following God in faith. We also have motives which are not so pure. It might be that that particular will to receive for ourselves alone, which we were serving, no longer suits us. We want to do something else, but hidden within that is a mixed motive, is a desire to better ourselves in some other way from this perspective of our own wills to receive. So this is actually the issue here. The issue really is here is that it's not just when we're coming out of our wills of a certain will to receive, all right? it might not be completely pure. In fact, it very often isn't. You've got the aspect Yashar El, the soul, which is straight to God, but you've also got the other aspects, okay? And they're joining on as well, all right? So that's what he wants to say here. And then he gives other examples when the people are simply called the people. And for example, Vayakel Am al Aaron, the people assembled against Aaron. That was at the time of the golden calf. V'yaha Am Kippur Shesh Moshe, and the people saw that Moses was delaying coming down the mountain. V'ken kulam, and likewise. But Yisrael hayu b'matzav garua. In all these situations, Israel was in a low spiritual state. The Zohar calls, the Torah calls them just the people, velo ami, and not my people. I think it's very interesting also that after the Mishkan was made, and they were still at Mount Sinai, Moses made a separation between Am Yisrael and the Erev Rav. Like, again, you can take this, first of all, let's take it historically, like, you know, in the literal sense, and just figure out what's happening. And that is after they built the sanctuary, all right, and the golden calf had happened, then we have the organization of the camp in a very strict organization. You have the tribe of Yehudah is the vanguard. He's going in the front. He's on the eastern side. You have Reuven and the associated tribes with Reuven on the right-hand side. That's the south. I've forgotten who's on the other side. I think it's Ephraim, actually, on the western side. And then bringing up the rear, you've got Dan. Okay. And, you know, the tribes are apportioned and set out with their particular tribes and their flags, and all the camp is organized. And the Erev Rav are no longer mixed with the people. The Erev Rav are separate. They're behind the camp completely. They're outside the Machane Yisrael. And I think that one of this really teaches us that we also need to separate for ourselves. When we are dealing with our wills to receive for ourselves alone, separate out our motives, to separate the Am Yisrael part, the will to give unconditionally, the will to march in faith into the wilderness, the will to come to Mount Sinai, K'ish echad b'lev echad, and you've got the mixed motives, okay, which are, yes, I don't want to serve that particular will to receive myself alone, but I've got other wills to receive myself alone, which I've got involved here, all right? And so, Torah shelo lishma, all right? And so, again, Rav Ashlag teaches us that we need to separate this out during the day, so that most of the day we need to be concentrating on the faith and the giving, the right-hand side, that God is good and does good, and everything that we're doing is good, and connecting with the soul. And then for half an hour a day to set time to actually look and see, where is our Erev Rav? Where is our will to receive for ourselves alone actually functioning, and where are they mixing in with our will to give? All right, and to keep it as far as possible separate and have recognition of that Erev Rav. Okay, so that it doesn't overtake us. Now, there's a little story here, which I'm not going to go into. So, Rabbi Yitzhak, Rabbi Yehuda were going on a journey, okay? And here in Lamed Daled, it goes on to say, boy, come and see. If there hadn't been this mixed multitude which joined with Israel, the whole story of the golden calf wouldn't have happened. And those who died of Israel wouldn't have died. And they wouldn't have caused to Israel everything that happened as a consequence of the Erev Rav. Okay? Because ultimately it was from the sin of the golden calf. We didn't have the first tablets were smashed, and that sort of negative aspect had crept in, which ultimately, I guess, led to the destruction of the temple. So, Shlamana Kodesh Baruch Hu, Ratzah Shimtzu Yisrael B'oto Sha'ah B'Kabbalat Torah Kamalachim Elyonim, V'lasot otam chirut mikol, chirut mimavet. And this is what the Zohar tells us, that we learn that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to find Israel at that moment of receiving the Torah, they should be like highest possible angels and give them freedom from the death, freedom from the will to receive oneself alone. They would be completely free from serving the other people, serving from our wills to receive ourselves alone. The other peoples are our wills to receive ourselves alone within us. We need to be free from that servitude. As it's written, engraven on the tablets. Al tikri charut, don't read engraven, read chirut, read freedom. Okay, right. Now then, they go on further to discuss the Erev Rav, all right, but I think that we've actually talked about it enough, all right, so I want to just move a little bit further on with the Zohar. Yes, this is a bit I want to get to, Mem. Amar Rabbi Shimon said, Mishum Yovel Shubine Helau Tame Eretz Mitzrayim. It was because of the Jubilee, the Yovel, which is Bina. God brought them out of the land of Egypt. What is the Jubilee? What is Bina? Bina is the Sfirah, which absolutely describes the desire of giving unconditionally. Bina is compassion. Bina is the desire to give unconditionally. Now, this is really, really fascinating because the Malchut, which is us, has that basic desire to receive. And on its own, the Malchut really can't do a tikkun. I mean, it can. The only thing it's capable of doing really is saying, I don't want to receive. I have a desire to receive, I'm not going to use my receiving. But to actually desire to give, the Malchut doesn't have that capacity. But when the Malchut joins with Bina, the Bina gives the Malchut that capacity. Bina gives the Malchut the actual desire to give. That's something else. That's a desire which pulls. It's like the Malchut can push us from behind, but Bina has to pull us from the front, okay? Because it gives us that lovely desire that I want to be close to God. I want to be giving to God. I want to be a giver. I want to be giving unconditionally. So Bina is called the Yovel. The Yovel is the Jubilee. What's the Jubilee? It's where the slaves are set free. The debts are cancelled. People can start again. All right? Freedom. And there are 50 gates to Bina. All right? The Torah was given through Bina. All right? So we have to count 50 days from Pesach to Shavuot. 50 gates of Bina. All right? 50 ways of learning how to give. If it were not for the Bina, the desire of giving, they would not have gone out of Egypt. They would not have come to Mount Sinai. And so therefore they waited 50 days. They went 50 days in order to receive the Torah. Now, if you look at the Sinai Peninsula, I mean, it's not that big. Really, it isn't. I mean, people who want to get somewhere, I'm sure they can get there pretty quick. It doesn't take as long as all that. All right. So all these times and ways and it certainly doesn't take 40 years to get from Egypt to Eretz Israel. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I imagine with some camels and carts and a lot of people, elderly women, children. I don't know, but it would take a while. But I could imagine that 3 weeks to a month or something, you could probably get there from, walk through the Sinai Desert. I don't think it's that far. All right. So all these distances are not distances of time. They're distances of spiritual attainment. Okay. 50 gates, 50 days from Pesach to Shavuot, because we have 50 gates to deal with, 50 different vessels to correct, so that we can come for the sake of giving all our vessels tuned to the sake of giving, to be able to actually receive the Torah on the day when it's given. Right. And it was for this the children of Israel came out of Egypt. Shebishvil zeh alu bnei Yisrael mimitzrayim. Now, I think one of the loveliest portions is this next bit. V'kach Moshe et atzmot Yosef. That Moses took the bones of Yosef with him. I always think to myself, he had so much to do, Moses. He had so much to do. He had to tell the children of Israel what to do, get the Pesach sacrifice going, deal with Pharaoh, and talk to God. He had so much to do. And yet he remembered the oath. He remembered, and he wasn't alive at the time, but he remembered that when Joseph died, he made the children of Israel swear that when God delivered them, he would take his bones up with them and bury him in Eretz Israel. V'kach Moshe, here we are, et atzmot Yosef, and Moses took the bones of Yosef. Shoel, Zohar asks a question. Lama he'ela Moshe atzmotav? Why did Moses take up his bones? Meshiv answers. Ele mishum shaya rishon loredet legalut. He was the very first to go down into exile. If it had not been for the fact that Yosef protected them and corrected the place and gave his directions and shielded them at the beginning of the exile, they could never have gone out of it. They would have fallen down so great that they could not have maintained their identity enough for God to be able to take them out. But because of Joseph, the tzaddik, they came out. So because he was the first to go down and helped correct that whole place. And he told them the sign, like the password, if you want, for the redemption. God will surely redeem you. Now, the word pakod yifkod is not a usual word to use. You'd say yigal otchem, yizkor otchem, but pakod yifkod is an unusual word, and this was the words that God told Moses to use at the burning bush. So when he told them to the children of Israel, they believed him. Okay, because that was the tradition that from Yosef, that God would redeem them in, that was the words that he had used. And he made Israel swear on this. That was when he died, he brought them around him and he made them swear. Because he had surely sworn the children of Israel. Membet. Zakal chukah de Moshe. Happy is the portion of Moses. Israel hayu oskim lishol kesef mitzrayim. Israel were busy at the time, borrowing the silver, borrowing the gold from the Egyptians. And at that time, Moses was dealing with the oath that we had sworn to Joseph. And there are different midrashim about it. How did he do it? Where was Joseph buried? Some say that his coffin was buried in the Nile, and it was through using the holy name of God that Moses was able to bring the coffin up. Another one says, Va'od amar Moshe, Yosef higaz man shagula Israel. Another one says that Moses said, Joseph, the time has come for the redemption of Israel. V'ama alei shor va'ala, and the shor, the ox, is a symbol of the tribes of Yosef. So he said, alei shor va'ala. He told him to come up, and it came. Others say that he was buried amongst the kings of the Egyptians, and he came up from there. And others say that in order they should not make out of him some sort of avodah zarah, they put him in the Nile. V'serach bat Asher, Serach, the daughter of Asher, who must have been extremely elderly, who was alive, I suppose, as a little girl when Joseph died, showed Moses where the place was. And I think that's a lovely midrash myself. Okay, so let's carry on with the Zohar, yeah? Vashem holech lifneim yomam, right, and God goes before them in the day. Rabbi Yossi Patach, Lamnatzech al Ayelet HaShachar Mizmor David. So Rabbi Yossi opens his discourse by discussing the Psalm of David, which is on Ayelet HaShachar. Ayelet HaShachar is like the morning star, okay? So the morning star comes, when the dawn, when the dawn is blackest, all right? And then it begins to lighten. How beloved is the Torah before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shekol mi she'osek b'Torah, ahuv hu lamala, ahuv hu lamata. Whoever is occupying himself with Torah is beloved above and a beloved below. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makshiv l'diborav, and the Holy Blessed One listens to his words. Ve'no ozev oto ba'olam hazeh, ve'no ozev oto l'olam haba. And he doesn't leave him in this world and doesn't leave him in the next world. V'atorah tzrichim lasok ba bayom u'balayla. And the Torah, we need to practice it, deal with it, talk about it, learn it, both in the time of the day and in the time of the night. The time of the day is when God's light is present to us. We can see it. We're alive to it. It's there for us. The nighttime is when it's hidden from us. Okay? Shekatuv v'agita bo yomam v'layla. You need to meditate on it when things are going well for you, when things are going badly for you, when God's light is clear, when God's light is hidden. Yom v'layla. Laila, by the way, night, isn't because God's light isn't present. It is present, but it's more than the balance of the light of Chasadim, the light of giving. That's what's happened. So when God's light is present to us, Baruch Hashem, when God's light is hidden from us, okay, we don't need to go into despair and think that God's turned away from us or something like that. The truth of the the aspect really is that we turned away from God. That's the problem. So what we need to do is we need to find a way of giving. When we feel it's night, it's not because God's light is not present. It's present. It's just we can't see it because we're in some sort of aspect of our will to receive for ourselves alone. We need to turn that around by adding an aspect of giving. B'katuv im lo bariti yomam v'layla. I created both day and night. Shoel, he asked, it's stuck by Yom. Well, that's fair enough for the day. Shuzman avodah lakol. That's the time of work for everybody. Aval balayla. But what about the night? Shuzman menucha, which is the time of rest. Lama tzrichim lasok b'Torah. Why should we occupy ourselves with Torah in the night? Umeshiv, and he answers, Kadesh nimtza etzlo shem shalem. That in order that it should be, God's name would be present in full. He kamoshe ein yom b'li laila, because just as there's no day without night, we have to have the night. We have to have the times when God's light is not present for us, because otherwise we would never know when we need to make an effort, when we need to move up a grade, when we need to work harder, when we need to change something. Okay, we wouldn't know it if it was always shining. We'd just think, we're fine and we wouldn't do anything. All right. Ein yom b'li laila. We wouldn't value the day either. There's an issue of yitaron ha'or sheba me'achoshech. There's the light shines brighter when it comes from the dark. Okay, so we have to have both sides. Ve'ino shalem elazem zeh. They are not whole except one together with the other. So the Torah also needs to be present with the person both day and night. And the perfection needs to be with the person right through his good times and through his bad times. Perush, explanation. Yom or zerampin. Yom is when the light is shining. Laila or nukva. Laila is the malchut. The malchut is when the light is not shining. Then we need to go with emunah. We're going to go with faith because the malchut requires faith. So sek b'Torah yom v'laila. So when he's practicing the Torah both day and night, nimtsami ached zerampin v'nukva. We find he's uniting the zerampin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the malchut, which is the Shekhinah. So he's actually uniting both aspects of God. The zerampin is God as the giver, and the malchut is the Shekhinah as God as receivers. He's uniting the zerampin and the nukva, which is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah. And this brings all the worlds into wholeness. In the meaning of, and it was evening and it was morning one day. And the most important part of the night is from midnight onwards. What is it talking about? Hatzot halayla. Okay, so we had this concept before. We've got the dividing of the Red Sea. We've got the dividing of the night. Okay, it's the same idea actually. So the dividing of the night is for the same reason. The light present in the night is great. It's great. And the reason why we can't see the goodness of God in times of night is because the light is hidden from us, because we are not doing enough giving, and therefore if we were to actually see that light, we would grab it for ourselves alone. So the idea of the division of the night is the same idea as the division of the Kriyat Yam Suf, which is we can't receive too much light at once. It's bad for us. It's much better to receive only the smallest amount and give the rest back. Okay, that's why we need to occupy ourselves in Torah in both times. Okay, because Torah teaches us how to give. Even though the first half of the night is actually also the night, obviously. When we divide the night, okay, all right, that is, we agree only to receive, take the minimum and do the rest in giving. That's called lachatzot halayla, to divide the night. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba b'gan Eden lishtashem hatzadikim asher sham. Then God comes to the Garden of Eden to have pleasure with the tzaddikim who are there. What's the Gan Eden? The place of the chokhmah, because there's no danger now that they would receive for themselves alone. They've already divided the night. They also already said, I prefer to be a giver than a receiver. Okay, therefore there is no problem because they are all only going for the sake of giving. So a person needs to get up and practice the Torah in both situations. And this is what we've learned. So when a person is practicing the Torah, the Holy Blessed One and all the tzaddikim who are in the Garden of Eden will listen to his voice. This is from Shir Shirim, one who sits in the gardens and the friends are listening to your voice, sound it forth. Who's the ones who sits in the gardens? This is Knesset Yisrael. The Knesset Yisrael is the Shekhinah, is the Malchut. It's the collective soul of all Israel. She's praising God. B'shevach HaTorah, in the praise of the Torah. Balayla, in the night, that is in the time when the light is hidden. Ashrei chelko, happy is his portion. Al mi shemishtatef ima l'shabech HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shevach HaTorah. Happy is the portion of one who joins with the Shekhinah to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the praise of the Torah. V'kad atit safa, Knesset Yisrael, atia mishtashat bei b'kudsha Baruch Hu, v'ushit la lagabei shavita d'chesed, v'lo ala b'chodahu, ela ala, v'alinun d'mishtatfin b'hada, v'aytma d'chtiv, yomam nitzaveh shem chasto, u'valayla shiro imi. And when the morning comes, the Knesset Yisrael comes, which is the Malchut, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving pleasure, and he extends to her the scepter of loving kindness. Not only to the Shekhinah, but to all those who take part together with her. And as we've learnt, as it's written, Yomam Yitzaveh Hashem Chasto, Uvalayla Shira Imi. And in the day, God commands his loving kindness, and in the night, his song is with me. Which means whoever occupies himself in Torah in the night, God draws to him a thread of loving kindness in the day. And therefore, the Malchut is called Ayelet HaShachar, the morning star. That is because of the praises for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the night, in the praise of the Torah. V'amar Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon said, B'shah shetzich la'yer boker nechshach v'nechshachar ha'or. At the moment when you think the morning is going to give its light, that's just when the light gets darkest. Okay, Vashachoret nimtza, and the darkness, the most dark aspect is to be found. Az mitchaberet isha b'ba'ala. This is when a woman connects with her husband. Shelamadnu b'shmura gimel, from the third watch of the night. Isha mesaperet im ba'ala. The woman is shining with her husband. That is the Zerampin and the Nukva, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Malchut. v'saper imo, to shine with him, ba'al heichalo, comes to his temple. Okay. And after that, when the sun rises, the night is shining. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, that's what I think. It's when the sun rises. Yes. The night is shining and comes and takes it. And the gates are closed. Oh, wait a minute. No, I think I translated this all wrong. Let's say this again. Yes. Afterwards, when the sun needs to set again, okay, and the night is shining and comes and takes away the sun, then all the gates are closed and the donkeys bray and the dogs bark, and then we divide the night, okay, and the same idea is Kriyat Yam Suf, to divide the sea, all right, to divide the night, to divide the sea, okay. It's the same idea that we don't receive for ourselves alone, okay, and we add chesed, and then the sea can divide, okay, and allow us through on dry land, and the night can add its beauty and bring the Shekhinah into connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay. When the night divides, the king arises, that's the Zerampin, but Matronita, and the matron, which is the Malchut, Matchila lezamer, begins to sing, V'amelech shu Zerampin ba dofek al sha'echal, and comes and knocks on the gate of the temple, V'amar pitchi li achoti rayati, open to me, my sister, my beloved one. V'az mishtashem neshamot hatzadikim, and then he is making happy with the souls of the righteous. Okay, well, we didn't do quite so much on the Yam Suf. We didn't get as far as I thought we would, but I really liked that piece of Zohar. I thought it was so beautiful. So anyhow, that was just as good. Okay, all right, everybody. Well, Baruch Hashem. Thanks, Rochelle.